The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this particular episode is the Kenobi Report. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Napzok, and man, I'm not ready to leave Kenobi land, so very happy to be here. Very happy to be here.
Kenobi fever can be a chronic condition if you wish it to be so, and it certainly is for us here on ForceCenter. We wanted to do this extra episode of the Kenobi Report. We have, of course, looked at each individual episode, the first two obviously together as they were released together. But we also wanted to take a step back and look at the whole series. And in particular, Ken and I wanted this opportunity to get the perspective of our partner, Jennifer Landa. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you for having me. I have Kenobi fever and I don't want it to go down.
Excellent. No ice packs for Kenobi fever. We are going to get right into this right away because we have a limited time to record. And those of you who are regular listeners know that we like to share so many thoughts. We're going to try to contain ourselves a little bit so we can finish recording in our amount of time that we have today. And so we can make sure to hear Jennifer's thoughts on Kenobi, as well as Ken and I reflecting on the big picture. So Jennifer, I want to start. When and how did you watch the show? Did you stay up until midnight? Did you get up early? Did you stay off the internet for days at a time until you could watch? What was your Kenobi viewing experience?
I almost watched it at midnight. I was watching Stranger Things and I thought, well, I could continue. I thought, no, I want to be fresh. I want to be able to be fully awake. So I waited. I did not check social media. Wednesday morning, I woke up, took my kids to their camps and their school, sat down at my computer and my coffee, and then I just cried the entire episode, basically.
And was that your general rhythm for all of the episodes? Did you wait until Wednesday morning, get everything else taken care of, and then it was Jennifer Kenobi time?
Pretty much. I think that the only time where I did stay up at midnight was maybe like episode 2. I don't think 3, because, I have to watch it kind of at a lower volume because my kids are asleep. And so it's just it doesn't have the same impact. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I usually watch it Wednesday mornings by myself.
Yeah, that's such a great picture. It reminds me of, trying to watch things, when I was a teen and started to watch some violent and naughty movies late at night and trying to keep the volume down. So didn't wake my parents.
Right, exactly.
Everything comes full circle when you're a parent, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So, Jennifer, what was your overall reaction to all of Kenobi? Were you surprised by the show? Was it what you expected? What even just emotionally affected you the most?
Okay, my overall reaction, and I shared this on Twitter, is that I believe this is one of the best TV shows ever. And The Mandalorian is in that group too. But I think a lot of times like Star Wars movies, Star Wars shows get kind of relegated to, oh, that's a Star Wars thing. No, this is right up there. Because for me, this was the story that I was actually least excited about. I've talked about that over the years. I was like, all right, it'll be good. But I was more interested in other things. Ewan McGregor, his performance as Obi-Wan, phenomenal. Like, how do they take these characters that we've known for 40 plus years and make them not only just as interesting, but even more exciting? I mean, we know where it's going to end up, right? We know where this is leading to. And yet every week I was like, what is going to happen? What is this journey going to be? How are these characters going to interact or their relationships deepen? And that to me was just why every week I look forward to it and why I think it's one of the best TV shows.
I really love this bold statement of this is not comparing, is it the best, Kenobi story? Is it better or worse than Mandalorian? You're like, no, good job, Sopranos, The Wire, whatever. This is one of the best television shows ever.
Yeah, it belongs right up there. Absolutely.
I want to shout out Joseph making modern references. I was going to say Hill Street Blues, maybe Frasier. I don't know.
Mom,
I would like to thank you for thinking 15-year-old shows are modern. That's about what I can manage for modern shows, even though I watch so many. I love what you're saying, Jennifer. I think it is. I think this show is an absolute tribute to just watching phenomenal performances. Certainly Ewan McGregor's, a lot of other characters, but also that the stakes, the plot, the what happens isn't everything. The how does it happen, and what does it emotionally do to us to go through these journeys with people are just as powerful as the how exactly does it end.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So that was a great emotional overview, a great and strong declaration that it is one of the best television shows ever. Let's get into like the big idea. We talked about all of the different sort of themes as it went along, but now that it's all completed, I want to get a thought from everybody about what the show is ultimately about. It might be many things, or maybe to some of us, there's one particular thing we're concentrating on. Jennifer, for you, when you reflect, what is this show ultimately about?
There are a lot of different themes, but the one that really resonated with me the most is that it's about trauma. For all of these characters, quite frankly, even the background characters who have been traumatized by the Empire and protecting the Jedi. And so it's like, how do all of these characters process their trauma? How do they deal with their trauma? We see the different forks in the road, right? Obviously, Vader has dealt with his trauma a specific way, and Obi-Wan is still wrestling with it over these 6 episodes, and we see him kind of come out of it. Even Tala, right? With her trauma and what she's choosing, it dictates her choices and her path, no pun intended. So that I think is a really interesting thing. It's also it feels like a very modern theme to be dealing with. And it's also is a hopeful one. Certainly by the end, we see the hopeful Obi-Wan glimmers of that we know from A New Hope. So yeah, trauma. Oof. Go ahead, please. Oh no, it makes a wonderful storytelling. You know, it's that deep emotion. That's why, you know, I'm crying, and so many of us are crying because you see these characters who are so tormented.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think, you know, we talked a lot about breaking the cycle of violence, but by framing it specifically as trauma, that still is about the cycle of violence. Trauma is often what causes that cycle. But you're so right to point out that so many of the characters are experiencing trauma, and you're seeing them choose how to respond to it. And Vader doubles down, right? And at first, Reva doubles down, but then breaks out of it. But then we have Tala. We have Roken, right? Roken could have just been like, I'm a good guy and I stepped up. But there's that effort to make sure he went through a trauma. He lost somebody and he could double down on vengeance. And instead he's helping. And you're right. It's so much about not only trauma, but how do you choose to respond to it?
Yeah, I love that use. You know, the fun, lighthearted romp through trauma. But that's the thing is I think it's important, especially as Star Wars grows on and the audience grows with it. And maybe there's some of these themes that, you know, if I was 7, I wouldn't be understanding a lot of it. And that's okay, because there's a lot of that, I think, even in the original trilogy, right? Bigger concepts, and Star Wars, despite sometimes, you know, having some Eopies making some sounds, it never really talks down to children to me. That's just my opinion. Maybe someone would disagree. You know what I mean?
Well, now you're making me think that the first thing that happened after the beautiful end scene of the best television show ever is that Eopie farted while Obi-Wan was communing with Qui-Gon.
Yeah, I mean, both can. I mean, everyone rightfully has been retweeting some of George Carlin's bits from the late 80s into the mid 90s. On that same special, he had one of his most epic fart jokes. It's all rolled together, right? It's all together.
Trauma and flatulence. Yes.
Oh my God.
It's all part of the human experience.
Yeah, and for me, you know, those kind of important standard Star Wars themes are here because they're always going to be here. Fear versus hope, and breaking the cycles of violence is a real clear one. Just good old redemption, right? Good old fashioned redemption. But I think it does come from what Jen's talking about. So for me, I took it's in the same bucket, that trauma bucket, but it's this self-forgiveness, accepting the choices of others in that journey, which is their journey and your journey. And those are sometimes very separate, or they need to be. They can be, but they're also very together. Let's be clear. And just being able to, the 3 R's. I know there's that movie a lot of people are talking about that's like 3 R's. This is my 3 R's. Being able to kind of redefine, rediscover, and maybe even reroute your purpose. And that has to do with choices and changing how you react to all this stuff. Again, none of it's supposed to be easy, but I'm even talking about Kenobi at the end. I've been thinking about that. We'll talk a little bit more about how that changed some of my thoughts on Kenobi in a good way, of just adding some further context of where he is in his life at this point. So that was kind of the stuff I took from it.
Yeah, no, I think this is all great, and I think trauma is a great way to say the thing that I was, really moved by, the breaking the cycle of violence. I think there's so much that's about mentors and parents and found family and their responsibility to the literal children in their care, but also kind of children as the idea of the next generation. But I was also really thinking about what questions felt like they were being raised in the first couple episodes, to think like, did they answer the questions that they raised? And that made me really think about the sort of specifics of the journey that the characters go through. And I feel like those first chapters raised the questions of what is family? Everybody sort of challenging, the lousy cousin challenging Leia's authenticity as an Organa. The idea of what does it mean to be a true leader, Leia being dissatisfied with being, a princess who waves, and certainly what does it mean to be a true Jedi? And I feel like the show really goes through and kind of answers all those questions, right? What is family is kind of everyone's journey, right? Kenobi and Reva define the Jedi as their newfound family. Leia seems very satisfied that her adoptive parents are enough, right? Owen and Beru really validate that Luke is ours. All these ideas of family. Vader even choosing Palpatine. You chose a bad family. But then what does it mean to be a true leader? We can talk in more detail about Leia's journey, but I feel like Leia goes out and has this experience and defines for herself, here's what I think it means to be a leader, and this is the kind of leader I want to be. And to me, this big picture thing with Obi-Wan, since he's the title character, is I really like how much the show raises the question of what does it mean to be a Jedi? And at the beginning, he's kind of defining it as, well, we were warriors, we were in a war, and we lost, and the battle is over. And then he gets challenged by Leia of, are you even a real Jedi, or are you just kind of cosplaying? He encounters somebody who on the surface appears to be a fake Jedi, who is literally cosplaying in a comic way, but then when the rubber hits the road, does what Jedi actually do, which is help others. And all these beats in this journey, but I feel like in some ways, that's what I'm thinking about a lot, is Obi-Wan's journey to redefine for himself what he thinks being a true Jedi is. And I think it's very meaningful that he has that flashback with Anakin before the Clone Wars, where he is defining a Jedi as protecting life, not taking it. And that is what he is really thinking about as he goes forward, at least in this part of his story. So that really meant a lot to me.
No, I think that's a great spine through the whole thing, right? It just kind of carries it all through and helps kind of answer those questions, especially because this is a series. And yes, we'll talk about sequels and all that good stuff, but or the possibility of it. But if this is to answer that question of how do we get from 3 to 4, I mean, that's exactly what it needed to do and what we were hoping it would do. And it worked beautifully for me.
Yeah, he comes back to his hope. He comes back to ideas of family, of ideas of what it means to be a Jedi. Good job, Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's what I'm saying. So obviously, we're all big fans of the show, but I do want to talk about the scale of the show in a couple of different ways, because I think it is something that lots of fans wrestled with. Maybe even after you wrestle with it, you're like, fine with me, but I still think it's worth wrestling with. So the show did feature the reuse of lots of aliens, costumes, puppets, as well as having some new ones. And the effects have been criticized for not being at the same level as movies, or in some people's opinions, even the effects of The Mandalorian. So how much did those things impact your enjoyment of the show? Jennifer, I want to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have talked about the volume and kind of the use of the volume in this show. And I think in terms of like aliens and costumes, reusing those things, I'm totally fine with that. I think it makes the galaxy very cohesive. It makes sense that you would see these same species, in different parts of the galaxy and whatnot. The volume, I did not have a problem with, except for only one time where it did take me out. And that was the scene on Jabim when Reva and her troopers land. And it just felt kind of small. I think that when we watch Star Wars movies, they feel very epic, right? Very grand. And there were times where I was like, oh, I kind of would love to see this on the big screen. I'd love to see Obi-Wan on his EOP, Lawrence of Arabia style, going through the desert, like that, I think. But so there was really only that one time where the volume, I just was kind of like, I can tell that this is like a set. But then whatever, we're getting Obi-Wan Kenobi over 6 episodes. So, I put it aside.
Yeah. Ken, how about you?
Well, you're wise to start with Jennifer, because I've been in the corner of the bar, complaining about this even going back to Mando. Yet at the same time, I end every rant going, Abby, but I love this stuff. So I always say, and someone tweeted, I don't, it's hard to tell. Sometimes tone on Twitter is, difficult to pick up. And they could have been joking. They could have been making fun of me not shut up about it. All of it is acceptable. But there was just someone like, you guys always talk about this volume. I don't really know what you're talking about. And I actually hope that was true, because not a me saying ignorance is bliss, not at all. That's not the word I would use, but just this like, hey, if you're in it and maybe you're not wrapped up in how this meal is made, you can see it in a way that even, I'm not seeing it at times. It does. And I said, going back to Mando, and even with Boba Fett, a show that I really loved because I was moved by Boba Fett more than I expected. It has impacted me, but nothing erases the joy. And I mean that. In fact, when they finally, and God, I hope it soon, release a Disney Gallery making of Kenobi thing, you're going to hear me on this podcast feed praising every person behind it, because there are some stunning moments of Star Wars beauty in this series. Great shots, things that, as much as I'm going, I don't know, that speeder didn't look like it was actually a speeder flying over the ocean. As much as I'm saying that, there's other times I'm like, that is absolutely a rock planet that they're fighting on. I believe it's real. Like,
right.
And it's just, you choose to engage with it. It is how you want. And it is there. And I do see it. I see it all the time. And I think they'll continue to move the tech forward, and maybe the budgets on the show will tick up. But if it's a matter of keeping or losing Star Wars TV shows or new Star Wars projects, man, I plant me in my seat in the center of the volume all day, all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all on similar pages of like, I definitely noticed it once or twice. And, it took me out of the story only because I was concerned about other people being taken out of the story.
Joseph, that happens a lot to me too, where
right?
And I'm like, that doesn't look great. I don't care, but someone's going to.
Yeah, when we talk about trying to just tune out the noise and experience it for yourself first, which is what I want to do. I just want to pretend it's pre-internet days. I'm never going to have the opportunity to talk to another human being about this. And I'm just experiencing it for myself. And then I get to open up to all the joy of sharing it and sometimes the not joy of dealing with, some negative thoughts. So I really tried to not be in that place, because for me, at the end of the day, yes, I'd much rather focus on story, characters, joy. As we've said, I grew up loving classic Doctor Who, which had a limited budget. And to me, sometimes when something strives beyond its budget, that's the Star Wars spirit. That's scrappy. That's hope. That's like, we only have these junked up speeders, but maybe we can make something out of it. And I know the counter perspective to that, which I've seen in comments and I understand, is this is Disney. This is Obi-Wan. This is Darth Vader. Everything should look great and perfect. And I think, maybe that is a valid concern. I think for myself, I think we don't know what's going on at this moment in Disney. The decision, who's making the decision about how much money they're putting into streaming. I kind of suspect Ewan McGregor kind of cost a lot.
Yeah.
He's one of the biggest stars ever. I think that might be a factor. I would also be happy someday if they decided to release things physically on disc, and I would be happy to see the Kenobi Special Edition with even better speeders on Blu-ray and 4K. But the other thing I want to be sure to ask you along these lines is some of the tension with the effects, or I can tell that's a smaller set. Is some of that the weirdness of seeing brand new Vader, Kenobi, and Leia on your television screen? And, lots of us are lucky to have, much bigger screens than the three of us grew up with. But it still isn't, I'm at, Grauman's Chinese Theater and they are 2 stories high. Is that a part of the emotional reaction?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think with The Mandalorian or even the Book of Boba Fett, I didn't really have quite the same reaction. I think because these are, Vader, Obi-Wan, Leia, it does. I am like, oh, I am watching this on my computer. This is a little different, right? And we grew up watching these, even for the re-releases, watching them in the theater. So yeah, I'm sure that is part of it. But, like I said, I'm thrilled to be getting these Star Wars stories. This is what we wanted way back when George Lucas was talking about making a Star Wars show. And the reason he couldn't was because the money, right? So it's pretty incredible, the technology and how it's allowed them to make these for us, the fans.
Yeah. Exactly. And I so agree with you, Ken. I think there's so much in this that is very, very beautiful. I will never stop talking about how much I love those establishing shots of Vader and Kenobi facing off on barren, stabby rock planet. Some of my favorite shots in all of Star Wars. Look beautiful to me. Yeah. Ken, do you have any other thoughts about seeing like Vader and Obi-Wan on the small screen on the computer, and if that's affecting you versus seeing them for the first time up there on the big screen?
Maybe, because I had Empire Strikes Back on this morning when I was going over notes, and Vader walks into the Hoth, Echo base, and yeah, it feels different, right? And it's not even because of the way it looks. I think it is a bit of a mental thing for me. I can't. I don't know. I can't disconnect the two, from my brain. Movie Vader, TV Vader, but the TV Vader looks good. He's just a little more shiny. A little more flashy light. His lights are a little bit more. But it's just a weird thing. And I that's why I understand if all, there's a lot of bad faith criticisms out there, though. But I've had some friends I've texted them because sometimes I'm like a mobster outside your flower shop with a baseball bat going, "You got bad faith arguments? What do you got? What do you got? You got bad faith?" And that's not fair. That's not right of me. 10 times these days. But a couple of friends go, "Hey, look, I'm used to sitting in a theater and the music is all around me. John Williams is rattling my soul. And it's just not that. And you know what? That's 100% true. It's not that. It's a different serving of this wonderful Star Wars dish. So it is what it is. Like, even not to prolong this conversation, even Echo Base. I was looking at Echo Base today and I was like, it just feels a little different to me than, like, say, the Jabeam Gate thing, which I too, Jen, had, felt smaller to me than I might have wanted it to, whatever that means. But so I'm like, look at Echo Base. You could tell it's pine wood. You can tell it's a studio. You can tell it cost all this money. And then, like, the Falcon flies out and it looks like, Phil Tippett's holding it on a popsicle stick and going, boom. Like, it's just, but at 7, I didn't care. And it's just, that stayed with me. And that's just where we are. And it's probably not the last time we'll talk about it. It's not the last time it's going to be on Twitter. But it is what it is. And sometimes you just have to choose where you take that and where you go from there.
Yep. Your focus determines your reality. And we want to be sure to focus on this big discussion point. But then also, I think we all demonstrated at the beginning of this conversation that big picture, we're focusing on the joy of the story and the characters and all that. But I did want to talk about one other element, about kind of the scope of it. So the story itself obviously featured these important moments for huge legacy characters, so that makes it feel very big. This story was told over one 6-episode story that, a lot of people watching know was originally a movie that wasn't expanded to be a little bit more episodic. So ultimately, did it feel like a TV show? Did it feel like a long movie broken up into parts, as it's titled? Or did it feel like its own weird thing? Jennifer, did you have any thoughts or reactions to what it felt like?
Yeah, when I finished watching the final episode, I was like, that is incredible. The story that they told over just 6 episodes. That's not a lot. And I felt like every episode was crucial. It gave us so much, emotional canon that connected with the larger saga. So I feel like that's not always the case with TV. Sometimes you get some filler episodes or whatever, or some side journeys. No, every episode stands alone to create this beautiful story. I guess it kind of felt a little bit like a long movie. I don't know. It just felt really tight. And I really appreciated that they were able to pack all of this in. And it feels, his journey, his arc, Obi-Wan's arc feels complete. It feels authentic, which can sometimes feel rushed, when you only have 6 episodes, but it just, that's why I was like, oh, how are they going to do a second season? Like, it was so perfect.
Yeah, no, I really like what you're saying is that the longer amount of time in telling this one story gives multiple beats for Obi-Wan to make this journey so he can start in such a low place and end in such a high place. Ken, how do you feel about it? Did it feel like a TV show with its own episodes? Did it feel like a long movie or something different?
I wrote down its own weird thing is a great way to look at it. It truly is. And this is specifically for Kenobi versus Boba Fett, a character we spent minutes with in our lifetime, and Mando, which is its own world. You know, so the presentation feels different, not just in the text side, but in the story. And a weird thing, because it did feel like a TV show, and I really enjoyed that. The cliffhangers, kind of the long play stories, the big ending, like it really worked. Like Jen's saying here, it's very much up there with Facts of Life and Different Strokes as some of the best TV shows of all time. The references work their way back. But yeah, and I got to live with Kenobi a lot longer than I would have if it was just a movie. That said, you know, they delivered this up with a bigger budget and did some different things, and this ended up being the movie that had been talked about. I bet I would have been really happy with that. But I don't know. There were so many other things that didn't feel squished into a 2-hour movie. And it's funny because, Jen, you're right. It's like, man, there was only 6 episodes, and one of them was like 38 minutes. Like, nuts to that. Give me more. But they really did have, I think, more time than they would have, and I think that's just reality. So therefore, it did feel like its own weird thing. And guess what? I don't have to choose. This is what we got, and I'm satisfied. That said, though, Kenobi 2-hour movie of the week going forward, I'm good with.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really glad that we had this conversation, because I feel like, great, you know what? I always like, as a philosophy, don't shove things into boxes. And that's what this is. I'm not going to shove Kenobi in a box. It's its own weird thing. There are parts of it that to me work incredibly well as episodic television. There's a real effort made to have those cliffhangers, but each episode is a different conflict along the journey.
Yes.
Like each conflict that started in the episode is a mini conflict within the larger conflict. And there's a real effort to have that like galaxy hopping. Each episode is on a different planet, you know, up until we get to, you know, part 6, where it's multiple planets. So there is a real effort to create that episodic feeling. And yet it is movie-like in that it is its own big story. That is the 3-act structure is still there for the most part. So it feels like something I would love to see it all smashed together in whatever amount of time that takes in a theater and see it on the big screen. But I wouldn't trade, even of a 2.5 hour, even a 3-hour movie version, I wouldn't trade it for the amount of beats that we get in Kenobi's development. The amount of small, quiet moments that we get between characters, particularly precious Kenobi Leia moments, where 1 or 2 of them might needed to have been compressed or axed in order to move it forward. And I also think, just structurally for me, I think a movie version would not have Fortress Inquisitorius.
I agree with that, actually.
Structurally for me, I think that's where you can see the expansion from a movie into a 6-part episode, because there's so much that's vital to characters that happens at Fortress Inquisitorius. It is, of course, super cool to see it. It is telling of what Leia and Obi-Wan are going through. It's a kind of a crucial beat for Obi-Wan to start to reawaken. But all those things plot-wise probably could have happened on Jabim.
Yeah.
And I think that expansion, that Fortress Inquisitorius episode, for me, like it doesn't move the overall plot forward as much, because it is, you know, get Leia back, bring her back to Jabim. But all these wonderful character things and world building things happen there. And that's the kind of stuff that we would have lost if it was a 2.5 hour movie.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's a ForceCenter well said indeed. Just because trying to look at it from that writer point of view, yeah, that's probably the spot you cut. That's the deleted scene that you watch on the DVDs 2 years later. But yeah, I'm with you. Because what we got to spend more time with beats like that, and I love that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So a lot of the ideas in the scenes in this show are very, very heavy, and, you know, poor Obi-Wan's having a rough time for a lot of the show. But I still left feeling like the show was joyful, funny, and felt alive. Do you agree, Jennifer? And if so, how do you think the show managed to feel joyful and funny and alive while dealing with, as you said, trauma?
Yeah. Young Leia was the key. Every time she's on screen, even when she's, you know, trapped, being held hostage, whatever, just like when she's talking to Lola, okay, come on, Lola, like just the actress, Vivian Lyra Blair, is incredible. Like, she's so real and alive and hopeful, right? Everything feels so hopeful with her obviously her relationship with Obi-Wan is fantastic. And just really, yeah, I feel like every time she was on screen, I was just delighted. Even when she was in trouble, I was delighted at what she was going to think of, how she was going to approach the situation, and kind of like the resilience that she would exude, really, and like the strength, and like, come on, we got this. Let's go now. I'm ready. Yeah, young Leia was a key.
That literal energy of forward movement. Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. Leia herself, I think Obi-Wan's charm for me, even in pain. Like one of my favorite lines is when he tells Tika, like, hey, if you're trying to resell me my own stuff, could you at least clean it as a courtesy? And I think it was really crucial that we established in that first part, like the first 3/4, first half of the first part, to see Obi-Wan absolutely devastated. Mm-hmm. But then after that, even though he's still going through great trauma, everyone is pulling at him to act, to reconnect with hope, and to move forward. And he's kind of like, all right, I'll take a half step. All right, I'll take a half step. Okay, I'll take a step. Okay, I'll take 2 steps. So he is always delivering this motion toward more forward movement, while Leia's just rocketing forward and pulling him along. And I think also just functionally, particularly in parts 2 and 3, which have some, sad, brutal stuff in them, Leia and Obi-Wan, Leia's forward movement, but also Leia and Obi-Wan's comedy act together. Mm-hmm. And the kindness, one of my favorite scenes is their conversation about, their biological families versus their found families. It's so kind and so healing. And then as you get into the back half, the existence of the path, that focus on the next generation, that's hopeful. And then by the time you get to part 5, when I just kind of close my eyes and think of how is this show joyful? I picture sunny Coruscant with Obi-Wan and Anakin in better times. Anakin needing to learn a lesson and maybe not, but still, that's just it's this picture of the light and the life and the hope of the Jedi before the dark times. And that made a big difference to me too. Ken, where do you go with this, with how the show managed to still feel joyful and fun?
Oh, a lot of different places. This is, and I was gonna start with something else, but Joseph, you got me thinking of just how there was, even going back to that trailer, right, of the music swelling as Kenobi looks up, right, and you got to find hope within the dark times, hope within fear, that big Star Wars theme. And so in a way, that's what the series is doing, right? It is a little murkier. It is a little depressing at times. It is traumatic, but the hope is there. It's just kind of hidden from you. You got to find your way back, or it's like the path where it literally kind of has to be hidden. And it emerges, it shines through, especially at the end, where even just, Ewan McGregor's laugh, right? That hearty laugh, Leia, is kind of almost what we're all building to in a way, for me. And the moments, I put down the note too, of the moments where Kenobi's charm emerged were great. And that happens all the way through. But particularly, I really dig the first episode. Kenobi bartering with Tika. Indeed, it proves that Kenobi is alongside Sanford and Son. It's one of the best shows of all time. Absolutely. I could watch Tika and Kenobi go for an entire episode. Really good. Right. Really good. But this is, and we've got a little bit more character stuff on the way in this conversation, but this for me is the little Leia steals the show section for me. Mm-hmm. Even now, I find myself just wanting to go back and watch her scenes, or especially the exchanges with Bail and Ben. But I was having breakfast with a friend the other day who can sometimes, I think, choose the cynical side. And they just kind of said, well, Leia carried that show. And there was some negative connotation to that. But also I was like, in a way, I think that's true. I think that undercuts a lot of what was in the show and a lot of the performances of everyone there. So it's not something I say, you're 100% right. But I get that point of view, because I think she was the hope. I think she was the light going through the entire journey, even in the darkest hours, even in the darkest hours, saying, is this a staring contest? Made you laugh and remember that there's good things still out there to fight for and to return to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be the sort of praising Leia to maybe critique some other things, way to say it, which of course that person has every right to their opinions. But I also feel like, that's what the show told us it is. It is Leia carrying Obi-Wan, that there's that great part in part 6 of where, Bail is saying, let us know if we can repay you. And, he turns and looks at Leia, is like, well, you already have. Like, that's the show saying Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan is carried by Leia. That's the point. In a positive way. Final thing for me on this is I think that I could watch 2 hours of Werner Herzog level depressing. And if one person gently, kindly touched a Jedi symbol etched into a wall, I'd be like, this is about hope. Like the power of that symbol and what it means and the idea of light not dying even in the darkest times, that's so powerful to me.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see the hope now.
Show us the hope. All right, moving on to our final question in the first chunk of our podcast here. I always want to be sure to really celebrate the just pulpy adventure serial thrill of Star Wars. There was a lot of that in this show to me. There were several big action scenes and big duels. We had Vader versus Kenobi on Mapuzo. We had breaking into Fortress Inquisitorius. We had Reva's raid on Jabeam. Reva's duel with Vader. Kenobi versus Vader on barren planet of Stabby Rocks. Official title. Which of these moments did you find cool, powerful, awesome, made you want to act them out on the playground? Jennifer, how did you feel about the action?
There was so much of it. Every time I was like, oh, this has got to be like the final. No, it's not the final. This is only in episode 3. Or, it's like, there were just, I mean, I was shocked. But what I think made it so interesting, specifically the Kenobi Vader battles, and the fact that there was more than one, was that there was the emotional depth underneath it. Yeah, it was cool. And I was impressed by how Ewan McGregor was so in great shape, great lightsaber fighting shape.
Mm-hmm.
And Hayden too. And so, but it was the emotional depth, the lines, the dialogue, the history that really made it very, very special in my opinion. But yeah, there was just, every episode had something so visually exciting to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. Ken, how did you feel? Were there particular battles or fights that you found either cool or you were able to embrace the cool because you were held by the meaning?
all of them. The main event really truly was the main event, right?
Mm.
I mean, and I can tell you, 15 years of booking wrestling shows, often the main event is the thunder is stolen by something on the undercard. That happens a lot. Not here. The main event was spectacular. It's one I want to relive over and over and over again. But it's, that's not to discount anything else. I particularly enjoyed Reva versus Vader. There's something in the action too that's different, especially the stuff from Vader. But the meaning behind it, the pain that Reva's experiencing in it, and I don't know, like going back to it, like I'm rooting for something for her to happen, but it's like there might be slight, I don't even say plot armor that's used in such a super, super negative connotation, but I didn't think Vader was losing a head or hand or ankle. You know what I mean? I think he was coming out okay. It was the execution and just her to reach that part and realize that this is everything I've worked for. It's my path of revenge, and here it is, and to know it's not going to go that way, and where it just kind of collapses on her. The emotions of it all really, really worked for me. So it had that what we love about Star Wars. Pulpy, serial, almost swashbuckling Vader's doing these cool moves, and she's pretty darn skilled herself, and then the big poignant emotions there. So that and a lot of the other things too.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm always aware that this is a part of what initially drew me into Star Wars, because it looked cool and it looked like nothing else, and the action was bizarre and otherworldly. But then I think without being able to name it in any way, what was going on behind it, I sensed it, and that's what made me keep coming back and appreciating it more as an adult. So I'm always really fascinated by the action because it is different and weird, and it is the kind of action you don't see anywhere but Star Wars. You see similar things other places, but for my money, there's nothing quite there's nothing exactly the same as Star Wars. So I think if this show opened with, a Jedi I didn't know fighting an Inquisitor I didn't know, and the moves were cool, I would have enjoyed that. But these fights are so much more enjoyable because you have the, oh, that's cool. And you have that, oh, that's so painful because of what the character is going through. And I think for me, the Vader's duel with Reva was way up there because we were seeing Vader do different moves. And there is that sort of like desire for that because we've lived with the character for a long time, and it would be cool to see him do different things. But then the fact to me that it was so motivated by, he's in his head about Kenobi, always, getting one up on him, and he's going to do that to Reva. Like Kenobi just made him feel like a Padawan again. and he needs to prove to himself that he's a master. So he's going to show her that he doesn't even have to take his blade out. In fact, he can hand her blade back to her. Everything in that fight is motivated by from Vader's side of needing to feel like the master. So I get to go, oh, that was cool, Vader. And I get to go, oh, Vader, you loser. Get over it, you know? And then the I think they lived up to the rematch of the century for me. I love that Kenobi Vader fight. I loved what was going on with Kenobi. I think that it is him using his full power and then choosing to step back. But then in those moments of using his full power, passing the lightsaber behind his back, the rocks moment in visual is just so powerful that I can enjoy it as the meaning, and I can just go, oh, that's cool. All right, so we are going to take a quick break, and then we are going to come back to talk about some of the specific characters and their journeys in the Obi-Wan Kenobi television show, one of the best shows of all time. Back in a moment. And we are back to continue our overall look at the Obi-Wan Kenobi television show. We're going to get into some specific characters. So, the show featured many characters, but it did all hinge on Obi-Wan's journey, ultimately leading to Obi-Wan's choice to stop fighting Vader. Now, this is something that we can talk about for a long time. We're going to talk about, I think, for a long time as Star Wars fans. But Jennifer, how did you feel about that? Did you agree with Obi-Wan's choice to walk away from Vader?
Oh, I thought it was the perfect choice, because the whole series is him being trapped by his own guilt, right? And so Vader has unknowingly released Obi-Wan from that guilt. And really, what is there to fight for at that point? Like, if the person that Obi-Wan loved is no longer there, well, that's it. He's following the Jedi code. He's going to stay true to his values by not killing him. But it's like, you're dead to me. You are just a monster, basically. That's just, you're not the Anakin that I loved, but it's not my job, I guess, or I don't know, to slay you. I suppose. I felt at peace with it because Obi-Wan felt at peace with it.
Yeah, and that's how you didn't get caught up in any other sort of like, how does this align with other choices Obi-Wan has made? It was just for you. You were in the moment and it felt right. It felt like what Obi-Wan needed to move forward.
Yeah, because it felt like up until that point he had been fighting. Is Anakin still in there? Is there any hope left? And when basically Vader's like, no, this is my choice. I'm choosing to be this way. It's like, all right, well, that's your choice, and I'm going to make mine, and I'm going to walk away. So
yeah, love it. Ken, how are you feeling? I know we've got a chance to talk about this in our review of Part 6, but I'm interested to see if the weekend has changed your feelings.
It's actually only cemented it in my heart is the right choice for the story, what the story's trying to say. But it also raises some very important questions. And some of them are those, I keep going to this phrase, the nuts and bolts of Star Wars. We were talking about that with Alex on the Star Wars Explained stream. And we mentioned on our live stream Friday of just like, we have the benefit of knowing the horrible things that Vader goes on to do. And also we know what ends up happening in his redemption. And so it's easy to look at it thematically and what is this telling you? But also I think it's fair to go, should he have put some handcuffs on him and taken him in? Should he have done this and that? I think that it does raise those questions that are fun for me as a Star Wars fan. Fun for me to know as Obi-Wan moves on, does he have not those doubts that are like the soul-shattering doubts we just went through with him, but maybe strategic doubts or, put more importance on him, like going, Luke might be the one, Leia has her path, all those kind of questions. And unfortunately, the age we're in, I think, not to have one of those the age we're in conversations here, but sometimes it's not a crack in the Star Wars story to be like, to ask, should he have killed Vader there? I think it's a great question. Should he have put a blade into his eye? Maybe. And like I think we said on another program, maybe our review, I think, Joseph, just like, imagine that. Does that seem right? Does it seem Jedi-like? Does it seem Kenobi-like for what we know going forward? Yeah, maybe knows the answer for us, but I think it's fun, and I don't want to lose that sense of fun with those questions. And even, again, going to me standing with a baseball bat outside your flower shop, sometimes I have to let go of, because I know those questions can be used against Star Wars, right? Oh, he should have killed Vader. Boom, they've undone Star Wars. And we'll see that time and time again, where I was like, yeah, maybe he should have, but he didn't. And I think it was the right choice for him in the story going forward. But I loved it. So in the end, yeah, absolutely love it.
I really like your passion, and I am now starting to be afraid to go to a flower shop in case you're waiting with your baseball bat.
I must have been watching like Once Upon a Time in America or something this weekend accidentally. I don't know. I feel like Valentine's Day Massacre is going to happen. I don't know.
No, I understand. I can picture it. I've had enough. I've had enough of bad takes from this flower shop. I think I'm so fascinated by it because it feels to me absolutely correct for this show, for Obi-Wan in this moment of his life. I think it is valid to have, debates and discussions of, what led Obi-Wan to feel like Luke needed to face down Vader and that death was a possibility in that encounter. I think that's a valid thing to think about and to discuss. There's years in between those stories. There's a different level of reality that Obi-Wan Kenobi is in as a Force spirit. I think everything that happens in this battle lines up very, very well with Obi-Wan's clarity for himself, that his truth is truly that Anakin is gone. Anakin does not exist. He tells Luke nice memories of his father because his father is dead, just like he tells nice memories of his father to Leia because her father is dead. Yeah. And Obi-Wan is, asking Luke to face this other thing, Vader. But I think he has a different relationship in this moment. To me, I think that he lived with guilt about killing Anakin specifically, because I don't think that's what he didn't want to do that. He thought he did that on Mustafar because he had to, because he was a warrior and he had to stop the threat. And there's plenty to discuss there, and we'll discuss that more in the future. But I feel like for this show, it really highlights at the beginning of Part 6 that Obi-Wan has returned to hope. He knows the importance of the next generation. This is a tactical move to make sure the next generation survives. And he's going into this battle ready to kill or be killed, ready to just embrace death, Vader's or his own. And I feel like the choice he makes is definitely about, hey, if Anakin's not there, then what am I fighting for? But I feel like it's also just a choice to survive, just a choice to continue. That I think it's really crucial that, the way the fight is constructed, he takes it to Vader and Vader's limping. Vader's not doing great. And that leads us all to think like, well, he could have finished him off, right? And that would have been sad. But watching it again, to me, what the story is that he gives Vader everything he's got. Vader stands back up, spits in his face, said, "You didn't do anything. I chose this." And we get to Anakin's dead part. But then Vader's blade comes back up and he says, "Just like I'm going to destroy you." It echoes the conversation at the beginning of their fight, where Vader says, "Did you come here to destroy me? I will do what I must. Then you will die." The beginning of their conversation is about death. One of them has to die. And I feel like for me, what it's about is for Obi-Wan in this moment, Vader's bringing up that blade back up saying, "I just want to keep fighting. I just want to keep fighting forever." Right. And Obi-Wan's like, "All right, you want to fight? I'm not going to engage. I told you when you were my Padawan, a Jedi's goal is to preserve life, not take it. I deviated from that a lot during the Clone Wars. I'm not doing it today." And I feel like it's a today, this moment, I choose to disengage from fighting. I choose to go on living, to go on evolving, to actually be here for the next generation. To me, that's all going on in that moment, to just be like, I've certainly experienced it where you've been in a pitched battle with someone you care about and you're not going to resolve it. And they just want to keep screaming. And God, I feel like a Jedi when I just go, okay, and walk away. And that's what I feel.
Yeah.
I feel like he walked away from a screaming relative.
Oh, that's good.
Or
that's really good.
An online Twitter debate. Yeah, no, I love that. Not to go carry it on from my point of view here. Just it's like this question of balance, right? And if he puts that blade in his eye, is that letting the dark side push a little bit more against the light, and that the water. For me, that always is this like tidal wave of darkness, and you're here to hold it back. Does that allow a little bit to come in? I don't know. Yeah, or does protecting the light and life going forward and taking them out there, does that work too? And I think honestly, I see cases made for both, right? If you're just having a bar conversation. But I think for what the show needed to do and what it needed to do for Kenobi, it was a powerful lesson, and I'm engaging with it on that level.
Yeah. I think the show is asking you to remember a lot of what Obi-Wan's gone through in this particular journey about needing to back away from violence in order to reclaim himself. And I think this is the right choice for Obi-Wan in that moment. And he goes on to be able to be there for other people. And ultimately, Vader or Anakin in the sparring flashback is proven wrong when he says mercy doesn't defeat an enemy. Obi-Wan lets Vader live now. Maybe we can debate that, but ultimately it is Luke's mercy that allows Anakin to destroy Vader. Final thing for me that I'll say on this is just because I've been really thinking about it so much, that great Clone Wars arc at the end of season 6 with Yoda, where Yoda is kind of he's learning how to become one with the Force and begin that journey, but he's also facing who he's become during the Clone Wars, that he's let anger and aggression get to him. And in this vision that Palpatine causes, Palpatine offers him basically like, you can save this vision of Anakin, or you can just keep attacking me. You can keep keep fighting me. And Yoda's like, nah, I'm going to disengage from the fight and I'm going to save Anakin. I'm going to choose life. And Palpatine says, we failed to break Master Yoda. There's almost a one-to-one going on here. And there's, like I said, there's always room to discuss this. And we're going to actually later this week on our questions episode, the complex Jedi, what responsibility do Jedi have to strike down Sith to save others versus this need to protect life, including just protect the idea of life by not constantly being violent. There's plenty to be discussed there, but I think for this moment, it was the right thing for Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
One last thing I want, now that you're talking about it, it's a total toxic relationship between the two of them. And right? Obi-Wan is just like, no, I am done being in this toxic relationship where you want this from me. I am reclaiming my time. I'm reclaiming my energy, and we're not going to play this game anymore.
Yeah,
reclaiming my life. Literally going on to commune with Qui-Gon, and he couldn't be there for Luke. He couldn't be there for the next generation. He couldn't be there for the future if he hadn't reclaimed his Kenobi time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So great. Okay, we could talk about this forever, and we will talk about it more. But I do want to move on. Unless any other final thoughts from either of you?
No, I said that he just pressed mute on the thread, and that's sometimes what you got to do.
Yes.
That's what you got to do. All right, let's go back into Hope. Let's talk little Leia. What do you feel like the show added to the character of Leia Organa? Jennifer?
Oh my gosh, it added everything as what we've been reading about in Leia, Princess of Alderaan. And for me, one of the strongest things of that novel was her relationship to Bail and Breya, having that positive parental relationship and between their child. So I really enjoyed seeing that and just how much they loved her, how much they believed in her and cared for her and saw her as their own child. And I also loved seeing how the experience changed her to become a leader, right? And really, like, she's a very precocious, strong-willed child, and everyone's kind of like trying to figure out what do we do with her? Do we just let her run off in the forest, right? And Obi-Wan's a person that kind of helps her and this own experience. It shapes her into becoming to know how to use all of her energy and her determination for good. And she kind of finds her own way. And Bail and Breya, being the wonderful parents that they are, they're like, yeah, all right, this is your choice. And I think that's wonderful.
Oh, I absolutely love that. Ken, what do you feel like this show added to Leia?
I mean, essentially, I think just kind of echoing a lot of what Jennifer said, but I think that's the point, because it was just so clear and it was just so purposeful and powerful for this character. Most of what will make and makes her so strong and important later is Princess of Action, intuitive, bold, passionate, empathetic. Just basically all those traits Kenobi listed off were there, right? That's why I love the slide and that chase sequence that gets poked at a lot when the guys are chasing her. Yeah, all right, maybe you would have caught her, but they didn't. I love that slide she takes because it
I'm sorry, I need to interject. Are you having people in a flower shop that you're standing outside of without a bat? Are they in there in that flower shop saying, I could have caught the 10-year-old girl? Is that what they're really saying?
It happens to me weekly. It happens to me weekly where I have friends or, they hear it on shows like, I didn't like the show that Chase. And you know what? Again, this is opinions are totally fine. Yeah, I understand it was. There was that one little weird edit where did the guy hit the tree or not?
Right.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. If you want to put Benny Hill music underneath it and that makes you happy, great. But that's my thing.
It's not easy to chase a child. I'll tell you that.
It's not easy.
I can barely keep up with my 2-year-old. It's not easy, people.
That's right. I can't catch a 4-pound chihuahua sometimes. Like, what do you want from me? I can't get over that doggy gate. My knees and back are so stiff. Who knows what these guys are doing? But my point is that why I love that slide where she goes down the hill and slides. It was a purposeful action. She's got all those skills in her, and that's how I took it. The rest of the chase is noise to me. It's that slide that makes it everything. And so the big thing for me was her being challenged by her role and duties as a princess. That's where we begin with a lot of it. She's a head of state, a potential leader. She's going to inherit a lot of things, whether it's the title of queen or senator, which is already being tossed over her head, right? I mean, in good ways, I think, with Bail, but that's already there. It's already maybe a path she's on. And that line that I keep mentioning, and I'm not done talking about it. I'll talk about this so the Shacks come home. The line from her mother of then do something more with it. And she clearly finds that more by the end of the story. And I just feel honored as a lifelong Leia fan who is recording in a studio that has Leia pictures all over it. Leia art is all over my house because this character influenced me in a lot of ways growing up, and has only influenced me even more as we got to spend more time with Leia. I'm just honored to have witnessed these events of her life at the beginning. I'm moved by it. I love it, both as just life lessons and as a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, I love what both of you are saying. I'm looking up at my my Star Wars poster with Luke and Leia swinging together. Leia's got the blaster out firing. I think that there's such great story where Leia has all of these intrinsic traits, and she is, adopted and loved by the Organas, who are going to train her to be a leader, and they have their ideas of what leadership means, of being symbolic, right? Greeting people, being a dignitary, waving to the people. These are all valuable things. They're being a leader who is a symbol and an inspiration, right? But she has this desire, this Anakin and Padme-like desire to get out there and do things physically herself with her hands. And that desire is established. And then I think it's really, really important. I think this is what adds to the character of Leia, to see this experience where she chooses to be the princess of action, because we get to see her experience firsthand the pain in the galaxy caused by the Empire.
Yes.
It's not a briefing. She saw it. She experienced it. And then she saw other people risking their lives, sometimes sacrificing their lives to help others. And to me, you can see her go like, oh, I'm happy to be a symbol when I need to be, and to give speeches, and to be an inspiration, and to wear the correct jewelry to signify, this political point. I'm happy to do that. But also, if other people are out there physically risking their lives, I will not be content unless I'm out there physically doing things as well. And one of my favorite Leia moments is in part 5, when she insists on taking the action of going into the small corridor, and it's just it's a plot mechanic. It's needed, but it's also just like such a visual of Leia is the one who opens the gate to the sky, who opens the gate to hope, and she could have maybe done that with a speech, but she did that with her hands. And that's the princess that we met in A New Hope. And this, I think, shows us how she got there.
Yes. To Joseph, you listen.
Yes.
No. We'll have to just do an episode on the journey of Little Leia at some point, because it's really important. And so just one of the most perfect castings in the history of castings. But and I really mean that. But she's kept on Alderaan for good reason. We know the reasons why. We got to keep her back. There's some things, and then because she gets taken, which has a lot to do with her own actions, right? She kind of gets herself in trouble, and she admits that kind of later. She has to deal with that later. And that's part of it. But that thing was a chapter 3 or part 3 where she's just kind of like, I thought the Empire's supposed to help, and like Kenobi just going, nah. Look at Joshua Tree here. It ain't helping.
Right.
It ain't helping.
Yeah. Got bad news for you, kid. I love that scene.
Yeah, and that flows so nicely into the stuff we eventually pick up with Leia, Princess of Alderaan, or even her appearance in Rebels of only 5-6 years later, and has discovered of what she's going to do with this position she has.
Right. Can't keep Luke on the moisture farm. Can't keep Leia out of taking physical action in the fight, which is definitely what happens in that book. We could talk about Leia forever, but I want to move on to Vader and or Anakin, however you want to describe him. Jennifer, did the show make you see Vader / Anakin in a new light in any way?
Yeah, it made me see just how like kind of pathetic he had become. I mean, when he's wheezing and he's just like not willing to just admit defeat, it's sad. He has become imprisoned by his trauma, and he's become so petty, right? Like he's just like, I want to make you suffer. I want to make you suffer for everything that's happened. But it's just like, I just saw it in a whole new light, and I think it makes so much sense. It continues the journey that we saw in episode 3, and with Obi-Wan, I mean, just really seeing his love for his brother, for his friend, for his Padawan. It gave so much. It gives so much and new context to A New Hope, for me at least, seeing this relationship.
No, I really agree. I've always liked the lightsaber fight in A New Hope and everything that Vader and Kenobi kind of say each other in A New Hope, but it makes it even more powerful. I don't think it's necessarily new, but I really do love that this series kind of zeroed in on the ego part of it, right?
Yes.
Because when we talk about Anakin's fall, we talk a lot about how he has this great compassion. He has compassion for Padme, but then that curdles into possession because it's his fear of losing her is about himself. It's not about her. He does things she wouldn't want him to do because he can't lose her, and it is a big part of his fall. But there are plenty of articles where Lucas is also talking about like he's greedy. He wants more power, and there are those lines in Revenge of the Sith where like something's not right. I want more. That his just desire to be the best,
right.
to be the master, to prove he's the master is also a part of his fall, and I love that they zeroed in on that of I'm remembering this time he beat me when we were sparring. He, the moment he defeated me on Mustafar, I was just bragging about how he's underestimating my power. Whoops. No. It's so focusing on that part of him that I love that. And then I really love that short, brutal scene with Palpatine that really exposes the lie of the Sith, right? One of the key ways that Palpatine seduces him in Revenge of the Sith is, it's too bad the Jedi won't let you care about your wife. All you want to do is save your wife. The Sith rely on their passion. If you come over to the dark side, you're free to fight for the people you care about. And then he goes over to the dark side and he gets told caring is weakness. You can't care. If you chase Kenobi too hard, I will think that you care about him too much. Like, Palpatine's like, you can't even tease him because you might like him. Like that level of the dark side is actually rejecting connection. And the lie that Palpatine promises him in Revenge of the Sith is the Jedi won't let you connect, but the Sith will, and they won't at all. And I think that scene really made that pain apparent to me.
Yeah, right there with you on the stuff with Vader. And at this point, I don't know if there's much to say about Vader until we dig deeper into him and maybe other shows like our ForceCenter shows. It just confirmed what I thought about him and where he was. But I love what you're saying too, Joseph, about it. It highlights certain areas and certain, dare we say, goals he has written on a Post-it note. More power to feel myself. To me, the Palpatine call is the ending. It is. He might have been on the cusp of some sort of change inside his heart, and he's like, "Oh no! It's all good. It's all good. trust me, Kenobi ain't nothing to me. He chose not to learn anything from the previous events of the last few days or weeks or however long the show goes, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was in Vader. On Kenobi, it definitely changed a lot of what I thought Kenobi did for the entire 19 years. Now I'm even looking at some of our conversations of what we wanted for the show. Long before we thought he might. I mean, we always kind of thought he might leave the planet. That would make some sense, even especially if you're doing a movie. But I've grown up with he sat in the desert and waited, and that was his mission, and what an honorable thing, and that's part of what Kenobi does. And I think some of that was there, but he spent 10 years moping about. He's going through the motions. He's emotionally stuck. And so it wasn't as, grand as I think I had thought in the 90s, particularly. So that was both old and new, but just some of the details. I never really he hadn't met Luke in 10 years. Hadn't met Luke, just leaving toys, which was aligned with some of the short stories we read. But to actually see that, to feel that and get that great hello there. Thought Anakin was dead. We'd always wondered. It was a fun question, but to carry it. So that was some new stuff. But then just kind of this idea of where it all ends with the future being a little more open for him of what he's going to do with it. And as the twins, and especially Luke, need to kind of grow into who they're going to be and how important that is and how he gets that and comes to that conclusion, especially with, I think of the own conversations at the front, which is just like, you just want to train him like it's your job. So now I think he actually connects and is going to connect and cares about Luke a little bit more, if that makes sense. I don't want to put too many words in Kenobi's mouth there.
I think it's all just, it's about choosing family. And I think that, Obi-Wan meeting him is about choosing family. Obi-Wan gets more connection with Luke, and Vader's still sitting there alone with Palpatine.
Yep.
Any other thoughts on Vader, Ken, before we move on to Reva?
No. Go for it.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so want to be sure to talk about Reva as our time is running out here. So Reva's story, obviously, very painful, very powerful, terrifying, tragic villain, I think. But obviously she chooses, makes a better choice at the end. Jennifer, who do you think she'll be now that she broke the cycle of violence? How much of her personality that we saw in this is who she is, and how much of it was her trapped in that rage cycle? Who do you think she's going to be going forward?
I think she's going to become a powerful leader in the path. And I think that what her past is going to give her is a sense of fearlessness. She has gone up against, she's been hanging around with the tough crowd, right? So I think that she now has a purpose, and she's going to use her strength and fearlessness for good. I also think it gives her a real understanding, an advantage of knowing the Empire's strategy. So she could be a real asset as well. But yeah, I think a sense of nothing to lose at this point. This is her new mission, and it's going to be something for good.
Oh, I really like that. Nothing to lose. Ken, what are your thoughts on who Reva is going forward? How much of what we saw is Reva, and how much of it is being trapped in the violence?
Yeah, I just hope she can focus all that pain on healing and gets involved in the path. Is something we keep saying. I love that. And if she wants to, right? And if years later we run into her and she's like, I started a martial arts and yoga studio, I'd be like, nah, I understand. You went through a lot. But yeah, I really love what this character did, and I love what this character represented, and would love to see more going forward. But that's where I go. I hope that she can focus all that pain on the healing and helping others.
Yeah, I think that I really love her story, and I love that Moses Ingram was also like really focused on what Reva's character traits were, and I think in interviews, and I think some of that is obviously not wanting to tip her hand at what's going to happen in the show, but she kept talking a lot about how ambitious she is, and I really like that Reva is very ambitious and also very direct. Like, I feel like some of that is the anger, and some of that is she probably would have grown up like that if she had a happy Jedi life. Like, I love that moment where she just runs out of patience for the Grand Inquisitor's monologuing and just throws the knife at the guy. Like, the Jedi will expose himself if I throw the knife,
Right.
Yeah. And that was done in violence, but I like imagining that's still a part of who she is. Very ambitious and very direct, of like, come on, let's just do the thing. Let's go. But using all of that energy to finding something productive. Like, she's still going to be angry. She has a lot to be angry about, but I think that's always such a great question of anger is understandable, but can you direct it into something productive? And I'd be very curious to see that part of her character. And also, I think she's going to have a hard journey to letting people in, but that's what she's going to need to do to truly heal, is to allow herself to be close to people again, since she's defined herself as alone for so long.
Indeed.
So want to be sure to touch on all of the other characters.
Yeah.
So we're going to break this up into basically legacy characters and some of the new characters. So many legacy characters, right? Owen and Beru, Luke Skywalker, Bail and Brea Organa, Palpatine, Qui-Gon, Grand Inquisitor, Fifth Brother, the corpse of Terra Sinube, one shot of 3PO, a mention of Quinlan Vos, Corran Horn from Legends, and his mom. Jennifer, were there any of these legacy characters that you were particularly impacted by?
Definitely Bail and Brea. Like I said before, I mean, to me, that was what I wanted to see. I wanted to see their relationship with young Leia, and we got it. We got a lot of it, because I was worried at first. I thought, oh, maybe they're only going to appear in one episode. But no, their presence was definitely felt and seen throughout. There were just so many nods to the other parts of the fandom, as you mentioned. You know, if you're a fan of the Clone Wars, you got these characters. If you're a fan of Rebels, you got these characters. Legends even. So I really felt like, oh, and even the video games, right? Like,
Yeah.
right? So I think that they really were intentional with that. Like, hey, there's something for everyone here. Even if it's just a little nod, it means a lot, I think.
Yeah, I think, Filoni said a lot of times in various interviews at Star Wars Celebration in particular, like, it's a connected story. And I know sometimes fans get frustrated with, the amount of characters who reappear, but I kind of think that's Star Wars storytelling in a lot of places, in a lot of ways. And this was definitely it. For me, obviously, the Terra Sinube thing, joke about it, it was painful, but it is really cool to see this, relatively obscure character who does have a lot of meaning in such an impactful scene. That was really great. More physically seeing Alderaan for sure, and Brea, great. But I think perhaps what was most impactful for me was Beru. We talked a lot about it, and I kind of love this picture of Beru, who is, not just a fighter, but a realist. And she was realistic about the threat to Luke in this episode, and in A New Hope, she's realistic that he can't stay on the farm. I just kind of almost want counseling from Beru of like, Beru, what's the realistic thing that I just have to buck up and face right now?
Yeah.
So Beru meant a lot to me. Ken, how about you?
Right there, on Owen and Beru. I'm the Beru crew has a member in me for sure.
Yes.
Absolutely does. Bail and Brea. Jimmy Smits in a way might have actually stolen the show from me, like in a weird way. Like his moments with Leia and Ben in episode 1, and that moment at the end, which is just one of my favorite moments of we'll change things together. I think it's just downright important to the Star Wars story. And Simone Kessel was a delight as well. And I'm manifesting, please be an Andor. Please be an Andor. I really would love to see more of her as Brea. Both were just fun to watch.
And that would be a great way to continue the story of the rebellion and how the Organas are feeling about it. Obviously, we know from the book Princess of Alderaan, but it'd be fun to see live action. Also, a few new characters, Tala Durith, Colin Roken, Haja Estri, Freck, Fourth Sister, Ned B, Dinosaur Guy, Lola, Tika the Jawa, Wade, Solly, the rest of the Path, Vect Nokru, a.k.a. Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers, Ken, I can't believe this. This is so great. The person from the meat cutting station, Tibetan Station, I found the character's name. It is Groff Ditcher.
My new favorite.
Is a perfect name, right? Yeah, Ken's been going on about, I think, a perfect description of Coen Brothers villain from the 90s. Anyway, Groff Ditcher. Jennifer, which of these new characters or moments involving them spoke to you?
I love them all. And the reason why I love them all is like what you just mentioned. You found the name of this minor character. I have such a distinct picture of who he is in my mind. And you can say that about all the characters that you mentioned. Each one brings something different, no matter if they're literally in the background. And they're so specific. They evoke a specific emotion in us. And I feel like that is such a Star Wars tradition, and that's what makes this show so special, that we can I fall in love with dinosaur bounty hunter guy. Like his meal got interrupted, he had to go answer the call.
And I love your TikTok video that features a lot of the background aliens with a special love for Dinosaur Guy, which made me love Dinosaur Guy even more. Ken, of the new characters, who spoke to you?
I mean, it's all about Flea, right? Come on. Right? It's all about Flea. There's music fans here. No, this is a great list, Joseph. It's almost easy to overlook that this is a long list with great additions. And I mean, Tika alone was plenty. Like, we could have stopped at Tika. Quickly for me, Tala being part of something she thought represented her for a long portion of her life, but realizing that maybe it never really did, and it definitely doesn't now. Something that resonates a lot with me right now. And then doing something about it. It just spoke to me, and might be kind of what I personally focus on during subsequent rewatches. of this series. It was really great stuff, and big fan of Indira Varma, obviously, but I think she did great.
Yeah, no, there's so many of these characters that I really loved. Hasha Estri it provided a lot of comedy and such a great idea and perspective of being a fake Jedi and yet being a real Jedi when Obi-Wan needed to see that. I love that so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wanted to highlight Freck. I think he was one of the characters that was prominent, so I had a new design. But Freck is one of those characters that I love to dislike him.
Right.
He brings that weird and odd energy of Star Wars that I think you need amidst like the deep stuff and the cool stuff. You also need like the weird and almost silly and freakish, like I can't believe this guy's here too. And along with that, then also this great Star Wars perspective of the danger of someone who has bought the Imperial propaganda and has this super casual attitude of, well, they're not hurting me, so I guess they don't hurt anyone. I guess they're not a problem because I'm not personally affected. So everything from just being like, you're a weirdo to you have awful ideology makes me fascinated with Freck.
Yes.
All right. We are powering through. We would love to talk about Kenobi all day, but we do have to wrap up. So any final thoughts? Ken, I'll start with you.
Yeah, just in the time we have left here, this show, I think it's rewatches are going to be very rewarding. And even for those who might be like, I don't know, it was good, I had it on the background, I think you'll find some stuff there. And especially if you're like me and sometimes the tech, I can't separate my mind from the volume. I think once you watch that, this stuff starts to go away. And excited to keep this, so glad this exists, and I'm excited to keep digging into it.
Yeah, and for myself, I love this on multiple levels. As a big fan of Obi-Wan Kenobi and just seeing Ewan McGregor's just phenomenal performance, Little Leia, all the big themes that we talked about are all great to me. But I also just think for myself, it is a very valuable show forever, but also right now, because this is a show about choosing hope during a very dark time. It is a show that is reminding you that little victories matter, because every victory is inherently valuable. And also sometimes little victories set the stage for greater victories. Everything that Obi-Wan and Leia taught one another is going to go on to make a big difference. And the little victories do matter sometimes, even in very dark times. That was really powerful to me. Jennifer, what are your final thoughts about Kenobi?
I think that that's exactly why the show has impacted not just us Star Wars fans, but I was around a group of non-Star Wars fans this weekend, and everyone had watched the show. And I was genuinely surprised, because normally it's just me. And everyone had the similar sentiments and were really impacted by the show and were really invested. And I was like, well, wait, did you finish it? Oh, yeah, of course, I had to. That to me is a mark of a successful Star Wars show, where it can play on those levels of us hardcore fans where we're diving in, who's in the Jedi tomb, to these people who are just like, I just like watching cool shows. I like watching good movies. And this was that. And that to me makes this show really exceptional and very special.
I love that it just truly resonated as a story about trauma and hope. That's really wonderful. We're going to wrap up with a fun question. What do you think is the first topic of chat between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan as they wandered toward the future? Ken, what do you think is the first thing they chat about?
Qui-Gon's got some beard thoughts. Oh, I noticed you decided to grow a beard here. It happens all the time. Someone hasn't seen me in a long time, where, I used to never have a beard. Now I do all the time. They have some thoughts.
For me, I think they walk together in peaceful silence for a moment, and then I think Qui-Gon turns to Obi-Wan and go, "So, Maul and those robot legs, weird, huh?" Jennifer, final word to you. What do you think is the first topic of chat between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan?
I'm realizing I don't think that this makes sense, because like, there's no Dexes, but I found a great spot to grab a bite. I don't think Force Ghosts, they don't eat, but I think that she just would be like, let's just talk about something really silly and mundane.
I really like the idea that Qui-Gon's like, I can't. Can you go to this diner and taste that for me? Because it looks really good.
It looks delicious.
I also think Obi-Wan would ask, did you know Tika was stealing my parts? Did you just sit there and watch that?
Trying to get your attention. I love that Qui-Gon be knocking things over in the cave, like, get over your stuff and see me. See me, Kenobi. All right, let's wrap up quickly with where people can find us. Ken, you have the great list memorized, so go for it.
Yeah, we are at ForceCenter Pod on Twitter, on Instagram, and YouTube as well. Thank you to everyone who watched the live stream last Friday, at least at the time of this recording. That's when it was. Facebook pages, ForceCenter Podcast. We're available in a lot of different spots, including Acast, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. If you're on there and you can rate and review and you want to do that, go ahead and do that. It helps out the show. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. You can get an audiobook on us by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. And you can go to patreon.com/ForceCenter to support us directly. I'm at Cat Napzok, and my website's catnapzok.com. From there, you get information and tickets on my San Diego Comic-Con show. I'm a guest on Mark Ellis and Friends' long-standing traditional Comic-Con show, Thursday, July 21st. Jennifer.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Jennifer Landa, and TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138. I have more Obi-Wan Kenobi videos coming. I'm just trying to process it all because it's a lot.
Yeah, totally understandable. There is so much Kenobi to process. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is at Joseph Scrimshaw, and you can check out all my other comedy adventures on my website, josephscrimshaw.com. But for now, for myself, for Jennifer, for Kenobi, for Leia, for Hope, this has been the Kenobi Report.